dedicated to empowering you with information
to make positive choices
and be advocates for your overall well-being.
Welcome to The Health View. Welcome to The Health View. I'm Yvonne Dunitz, and today my guest is Andrew Salisbury. He is the founder of Purity Coffee. And we're going to be talking about coffee and the prevention of type 2 diabetes. Welcome, Andrew. We appreciate your being here via Skype, and thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Are all coffees the same?
No, I think, our perspective as a company is that coffee really is a natural superfood. The issue is there's lots of things that can be done in the production of coffee and the farming of coffee that can improve the health benefits. And there's things that you can do to, in a way, affect negatively the health benefits. And so a little attention to exactly what those things are is very important.
So what should people look for?
I think the most important thing is that the coffee needs to be organic as a starting point. I mean, that's the very, very basic starting point. Coffee is the most heavily treated crop on the planet. There's nothing that's more heavily treated with herbicides and pesticides than coffee, apart from tobacco and corn. And it's also treated in countries that are often developing countries that don't have the same level of oversight with the sort of herbicides and pesticides that are used on the coffee. And then, of course, when it's imported into the US, there is no checks and balances to just check what sort of products were used on that coffee. So if you ever look at a coffee bean, the bean itself is very porous, and it's cased in a cherry, which is very much like a grape. So it's very porous. So any of the chemicals that are sprayed on coffee really have a high risk of being retained in the coffee. So the starting point, it has to be organic. And another reason for that is that it requires very high temperatures to burn away these pesticide residues, and that comes with a different set of problems. So the starting point is it needs to be organic.
And so what does organic mean, organic coffee? What does that mean in the process of growing and what you do to keep it healthy and well for people?
Yeah. Well, what we've discovered is the closer that you can keep coffee to the way nature intended, like the closer the coffee is looked after in a more natural way, the more it's looked after in a natural way, the better it is for your body. So organic certification means that the farmer is checked, they don't use any of these sort of herbicides, pesticides on coffee, which are really effectively poisons. But the plus is for the farmer, it does increase yields. So in other words, you get more coffee and you have less risk of insect damage. So one of the problems with organic coffee is that most people choose not to go the route of organic coffee. So you need to make sure your coffee is certified organic.
And when you mention that, in a sense, there's no standards, criteria, or anything to make sure that the coffee coming in from other parts of the country is safe, where do you go to get your coffee beans, and how do you secure the best coffee?
Well, the first thing is it needs to be certified organic. And then what we do with our coffee is we go through a series of lab testing. So it's tested for mold, ochratoxin A, and it's also tested for over 165 different forms of pesticide residues. So that's a good check and balance. You want to make sure it's organically certified, but also there's another layer in there where it needs to be checked for pesticide residue, because there's a potential that corners are cut when it comes to the coffee.
So we're going to take a moment now for our audience to be able to view the wonderful video that shows the production of coffee and what your business does at Purity Coffee to ensure that the coffee is healthy and well for anybody to drink.
Here's what most people don't know. The health benefits of coffee can be dramatically increased, and many of the adverse effects in coffee can be dramatically decreased or even totally eliminated through conscious sourcing, processing, and roasting.
What makes Purity Coffee different than any other company in the world is we make every decision based on health.
from the type of beans we choose, to our harvesting techniques, to our processing and a specific roasting protocol that maximizes the health benefits and minimizes the health risks of our coffee at every single step of the production chain, from start to finish. Each harvest season, we lab test high-quality, high-altitude grown organic green beans to find the coffees that meet our specific standards for health. From Indonesia to Costa Rica, from Ethiopia to Brazil, our mission is to determine the highest quality green coffee beans that fit the criteria of our Purity health profile. Purity is always organic, and less than 3% of coffee worldwide is organic.
And the highest level of organic coffee is specialty grade. A specialty grade means they test for any forms of defects. Now, defects could be microorganisms, defects could be chip beans, which create problems with the roasting later on, and defects can be just overripe or underripe beans, among other things.
Mold and mycotoxins are a serious health concern, with accepted levels for consumption differing from country to country. Purity tests to ensure that our coffee is free from contamination and from microorganisms. We don't tolerate mold at any level.
We worked with the leading coffee scientists in the world to develop a roasting protocol. Thousands of chemical compounds are created and destroyed in the roasting process, and we wanted to find out what compounds matter.
So we prepare, organize, and document all these roasting samples for testing of health-related compounds. And our scientists are constantly evaluating the data and developing standards as we submit green coffees and roast profiles to them.
The challenge is that as you roast coffee, the antioxidants or CGAs in the coffee start to diminish and drop off rapidly. So we need to find in every roast and in every coffee that we produce that sweet spot to maximize the antioxidants and CGAs in the coffee and make sure that there's a minimum amount of acrylamide and no PAHs in our coffee. Coffee is very much like an avocado or an apple, that when you cut into it, when it's exposed to the oxygen, then it starts to stale and oxidize very quickly. And so that's one of the issues that we have with coffee, especially people who are buying pre-ground coffee. You're likely to be drinking coffee that's stale.
Now, since oxygen is the enemy of roasted coffee, we've turned to nitrogen to combat oxidation and promote freshness. Packing coffee with nitrogen extends the shelf life of unopened bags significantly. The cup of coffee you brew the day you open a nitrogen-flushed coffee bag tastes as fresh as the day it was roasted. When you drink Purity coffee, you're not only going to notice the difference in how it tastes, you're going to definitely notice the difference in how it makes you feel. Most of our customers report feeling a sustained, clean energy lift without the jitters or the nervousness or the upset stomach that comes from ingesting stale coffee, the normal coffee out there.
I hope that everyone enjoyed that informative video. Where do you get your beans from?
So that's actually a little bit of a complicated question. What we do, we're trying not to focus on a particular region because the thing that's most important about coffee when it comes to health is the amount of antioxidants in the coffee. And that can vary from country to country, crop to crop, harvest to harvest. So what we do as a very first step is we lab test 40 organic coffees to pick the ones that are highest in antioxidants. So this year it could be Colombia, it could be Peru, it could be Brazil. Next year it'll be a completely different coffee because our criteria is that the starting point is that coffee is high in antioxidants. So for us, it's less about finding the one farm or the one region that has good quality coffee. It's deciding in this particular harvest which has the highest level of antioxidants, because if you have a high starting point, you can maintain those antioxidants through the roasting process and through the delivery of the coffee, so that the coffee you drink is high in antioxidants, which is what our focus really is.
So the health benefits of coffee are what?
Well, it's one of the most well-studied foods on the planet. There's been over 19,000 studies done on coffee and health. A lot of these studies are peer-reviewed. They're accepted by major medical journals. So these are very, very comprehensive studies and large studies. Some of the biggest benefits of coffee and health are the prevention of type 2 diabetes. There was one study which is called the Nurses Study. It basically tracked 1,109,000 nurses over 30 years, and it shows different habits of coffee consumption. And it shows if you were to drink 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day, you have a 45% lower chance of ever developing type 2 diabetes. So that's meaningful. The other area which I think is very important is liver health. Since coffee is so rich in antioxidants, it's actually very good for the liver. Dr. Sanjeev Chopra is on our advisory board, and he's a liver surgeon and the last dean of Harvard Medical School. And the reason that he's on our advisory board is he's so passionate about the subject of coffee and health when it comes to liver disease that he personally has said that in his rounds, he's never found a patient who has end-stage liver disease who drinks between 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day. So it's a very, very good product for the liver. It's good for heart disease. It's good for prevention of heart disease. It's good for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. And in fact, it's been shown, a recent study out of the UK showed it was effectively 500,000 people tracked over 10 years from 2006 to 2016. And it shows that coffee drinkers have a lower risk of all forms of mortality in that period of time. So in other words, in that 10-year span, you had less chance of dying of any causes from 12 to 16% if you drank 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day.
Now, is that coffee instant coffee, espresso coffee, coffee that's grounded? What is it?
And I think that's a very important distinction. So the studies, and a lot of these studies that were done on coffee, really didn't discern the difference between different coffees. They asked people generally, do you drink coffee, and how many cups of coffee do you drink? This recent study came out of the UK, was the first study to actually look at the quality of coffee you were drinking, and they found that the health benefits from ground coffee were far better than the health benefits from instant. But in a lot of cases, these health benefits come across the gamut for coffee in general. But what we've done is we've looked at every part of the compounds that are important in coffee, and we've said, how do we increase those compounds and minimize any of the negative compounds, which we hope is going to result in a better quality coffee for your health.
And what about roasting of coffee? I know that you can purchase dark roasted, medium roasted, different types of coffee. Can you explain the differences? And is there one in particular that is better for us to drink?
Absolutely. So the question of roasting, so there's lots of ways that we lose the antioxidants in coffee as it goes through the process. But the most sort of major way of losing antioxidants has been in the roasting of coffee. So if you lightly roast the coffee, you retain more of the antioxidants in the green beans. And as you do a dark roast, so a lot of these large coffee chains will roast the coffee very dark because they want to create a uniform taste. So burnt coffee in Singapore tastes the same as burnt coffee in Seattle. But one of the problems of this burnt coffee is you lose the majority of the antioxidants in the coffee. But there's a caveat to this. If your coffee is too lightly roasted, in the early stages of roasting, there's acrylamide. So what you really want to look for is you want to look for a medium roast organic coffee. The correct term, or the term for it, is city to full city, is what you would ask for if you went to a coffee shop. So a medium roast coffee.
And how long does it stay fresh?
Mm-hmm. And that's another point when it comes to keeping the antioxidants in the coffee. Coffee is fresh for about 15 to 20 days after roasting. And we've done a number of tests where we've looked at staling of coffee. And after about 20 days to about 45 days, there's a 25% drop off in antioxidants. And the problem is most of us are drinking stale coffee. Most of us are drinking coffee that was roasted months ago, and it's just unfortunate that the value proposition for a lot of companies means that they just can't deliver you fresh coffee, and they don't deliver fresh coffee, and then you lose a lot of the benefit of the antioxidants in that.
So how do you know that you're drinking fresh coffee and that you're buying fresh coffee beans?
So if my wife was out of town and I wanted to give her the best advice if she couldn't find purity coffee, what I would be telling her is this. She needs to find a certified organic coffee. It needs to be specialty grade, and you have to ask the roaster or the coffee shop for specialty grade coffee. That's the single highest grade of coffee. And when you ask for specialty grade, the advantage is that somebody has already done the filter for you, and they've made sure that your coffee doesn't contain any of the contaminants that could affect health, like mold, mycotoxins, ochratoxin A, chipped beans, broken beans, any of these sort of things. So you're looking for a high grade organic coffee, you're looking for a medium roast, and then you need to ask the roaster when this coffee was roasted. And you need to be in a window of 15 to 20 days.
And as far as what is the best thing to keep the coffee beans in, the container or the package that it comes in, or an insulated container, what would you recommend?
Yeah, and one of our challenges was how do we keep the coffee fresh if we're going to be delivering it through third parties like doctors and nutritionists and that sort of thing. So what we do is we nitrogen flush the bag so that the coffee stays fresh until you open the bag. Most coffee companies don't do that. So the step one is you need to make sure that the coffee is fresh, but once you've opened the bag, even if it's nitrogen flushed, it's going to stale within about 15 to 20 days. So you want to keep it out of direct sunlight, and you want to make sure that it's away from any moisture and in a sort of like a low oxygen container if possible.
Is there a difference of drinking coffee hot or cold or black or with milk and sugar?
We've looked at this in quite a lot of detail, and it's all about the extraction of the coffee. So there's certain ways to prepare coffee that's going to be better for you, or at least different in terms of how the coffee gets extracted. So the first step would be, there's French roast, French press. There is espresso coffee, which is very good to get antioxidants out of the coffee. There's cold brew coffee. All of these are very effective ways, or pour over coffee. But as far as coffee goes itself, I think if you like coffee with a little bit of cream, that's fine. Black is probably the very best way to drink the coffee because it's unadulterated and it's going to be much better for your health. But I think the trick is to avoid all of these, really sugary drinks that coffee has turned into. Coffee is a natural superfood, and the closer you can drink it to just straight black coffee, the better. And if you're drinking really good quality coffee, you're going to be able to enjoy it. The problem with most coffees is that you're tasting the bitterness, which often is the fact that the coffee has been badly treated and is of a lower quality.
And what about cooking or baking with coffee? Is there a certain grade of coffee that one should also be using in order to get the benefits of it?
I'm just a big believer that coffee is such an important part of a person's diet that you should always be looking for the best quality coffee, whether you bake with it or whether you drink it or however you prepare it. It's the number one source of antioxidants in the American diet. And that's not because the American diet is really bad. It's because coffee is incredibly rich in antioxidants. So if you have this one thing that you do every day, I think it's important that you choose the very best quality product that you can get, however you choose to use the product.
And how do you know and make sure that there are no molds in coffee?
It's unfortunate that more coffee companies don't test for molds and ochratoxin A and yeast in the coffee. It's a real problem in the way that coffee is processed and the way that it's shipped. Mold can develop in lots of stages of the coffee. And unfortunately, since consumers are not asking the coffee producer if the coffee has mold and if it's been tested, you really can't tell. So you have to go with a company that can show you standards that they've tested for molds to make sure there's none in your coffee, because I think it's a really a serious issue. And it's even more serious when it comes to cold brew coffee. People are now, especially in the summer, are making cold brew coffee. And the issue with that is because you're not pouring very hot water over the coffee grounds, you're actually seeping it in cold water. If that coffee has mold, it's even more likely to cause irritation and problems.
So you're better off getting the coffee hot than adding ice to it?
If you're unsure if your coffee has mold or ochratoxin, if it hasn't been tested, absolutely. I think to use cold brew coffee, you really want to be absolutely certain that your coffee is mold free.
Now, on coffee, how do people make sure? Is there a label on the coffee that helps them to know, that there are no molds or that this coffee is excellently taken care of? What should they look for?
This is unfortunate, and this is what we see as an opportunity to do a lot of good in the market. Is the fact that coffee is so good for you, and it doesn't seem like any company is really focusing on the health benefits of coffee and how to improve it. One of the basic things that we as consumers can ask for is to make sure that this coffee is tested, and so we can see on the bag that it has high standards. So we publish our standards, we publish our protocols and all the ways that we rate our coffee. We publish our lab results, but very few coffee companies do. And I feel like if consumers were more aware about how good coffee can be for their health, they would actually require higher standards of the coffee they drank.
And what's the statement that is on your coffee? What will people see when they purchase it?
Mold-free, pesticide-free, highest in antioxidants, and delivered fresh is probably the most important elements of this, and specialty grade. So the highest grade of organic coffee, tested for mold and pesticides and delivered fresh with high antioxidants.
And how can people purchase Purity coffee?
So right now we're doing, there's two ways that we're going to consumers: direct online, because we want to have a very large market. We want anyone in the US to be able to order. So they would go to puritycoffee.com. And another way to order is we've started to build a network of affiliates, chiropractors, doctors, nutritionalists, naturopaths, functional medicine doctors, because we think this message needs to be delivered by your wellness provider. And I think as wellness providers start to understand the health benefits of coffee, they're starting to realize that this is one natural solution that they can recommend to their patients to improve their overall health.
Now, in businesses each day, people start a day with coffee. How do they know in this huge container of coffee that's there? Should they be taking it first thing, or it could be sitting there all day long? The same pot is usually there until the end of the day. What do they need to do to make sure they're drinking healthy coffee?
Well, freshly ground coffee is important. So when we talk about antioxidants and the ways to store coffee, the funny thing is this, that a coffee bean will remain fresh after roasting for about 15 to 20 days. But when it's ground, it starts to stale within about 15 to 20 minutes. So coffee is very much like an avocado or an apple. When you cut into it, you're going to start to see within 15, 20 minutes, you'll see visible signs of staling. But you won't see that in the coffee, but in a lab test, you'll actually see staling. So you need to grind the coffee that you're going to drink. So if you're going to make a pot of coffee, it needs to be freshly ground. That coffee needs to be freshly ground, and then that's the coffee you should drink.
So when you go to a variety of different storefronts that have coffee, or to restaurants that have coffee, what should people be asking about regarding the coffee that they're drinking?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they're probably not going to find the same level of standards that we go through, but you can minimize any of the or you can maximize the potential of having good quality coffee by asking some basic things. The basic things are: the coffee is organic, it needs to be organic, it needs to be the highest grade, and it needs to be fresh. And you want a medium roast coffee. You don't want a very darkly roast coffee. So they're the sort of things that you need to ask for. But unfortunately, even some of the best restaurants really just serve substandard coffee. It just isn't something that consumers are asking enough about, and they're not necessarily asking the right questions. And hopefully that is going to start to change as people start seeing the health benefits of coffee.
So in order to make people feel comfortable about the types of questions that they should ask, what are the types of things that you ask when you go to a restaurant, or you go out and you're traveling, or you're looking for a cup of coffee? What would you recommend that they ask?
Truthfully,
Yes.
I don't drink coffee when I go out. I mean, I truthfully, I get tea now because I know the horror stories around coffee and the quality of coffee, and I have very high standards, and it's very difficult for me to get a cup of coffee that I feel is likely to reach those high standards. So I drink tea. For anyone else, I mean, I think it's really just a demand for high quality. High quality organic coffee is your first starting point, and if it's not organic, I personally wouldn't drink it. It's just one of these things that I think your minimum requirement is organic coffee.
And with tea, it's the same thing. Not all teas are alike, so it's important to
Absolutely.
drink excellent tea also, as well as to have excellent water that you're having
Yeah.
it made into. So for you, when you start your day, how do you do it? Do you put your coffee into a thermos and take it with you for your day? How do you have fresh, good coffee?
Exactly that. I'll make a pot of coffee, typically 10 cups of coffee that my wife and I will share, but we put it in a very good thermos and we drink it through the day. So it stays hot, but we're not reheating it or having any sort of heating element to it. It just stays hot. And that's what we do.
Okay, and so to summarize very quickly, what would you say is most important information that people need to know about coffee?
I think the most important thing is that this is potentially the smallest, easiest adjustment that you can make in your lifestyle with the biggest health benefit. The attention that you pay to coffee is likely to be one of the most important decisions that you make. We're told by our doctors to exercise more and eat more fruits and vegetables and drink less alcohol and exercise more. And there's a whole list of very, very good things that our doctors tell us that we need to do. And that's great advice. But for a lot of people, especially people who are pre-diabetic or have got conditions which mean that they can't be as active as they used to be, they're very different lifestyle changes or difficult lifestyle changes to make. Drinking a really high quality coffee isn't a big shift in your lifestyle. It's a very pleasant shift in your lifestyle, and it's likely to show big benefits. So I'd say that's the most important thing. It's worth the effort to pay attention to the quality of your coffee.
And so for people to learn more about coffee, they can go to, what is your website, please?
www.puritycoffee.com, puritycoffee.com.
And at the end of this program, you'll find out information on where you can get coffee, as well as a sample of the coffee or a discount related to it. We greatly appreciate everything that you do, and it has been a pleasure to have you on our program. I thank you very much, and you have a great day. Take care. Be well.
You too.
Thank you.